a trophy.
And we are back. We're back in Hyrule, Daddy. We're talking about the original 8-bit Zelda. Oh, specifically, we're talking about Uncle Bob's opinion, and I want to get into this opinion, that you think that the original 8-bit Zelda is underrated.
Yeah.
Specifically underrated. So when we last checked in, we were talking about, you told a great story about playing this game with your older brother. He beats Ganon. He blows your 8-year-old mind.
Yes.
It becomes a memory so impactful to you that it kind of started your entire lifelong love affair with video games, and is the singular reason why you're here against this table and me right now. So I want to talk a little bit about this game being underrated. So,
okay.
I'm going to say this. In part one, I talked about, like, I'm not the biggest NES fan in the world. I have my favorites for sure.
Or the biggest 8-bit Zelda fan, apparently. It's towards the bottom of your top 10 of NES games.
Yeah, that's yes. I would, you know what? I would probably put it at 7 or 8. It's not the bottom.
Yeah.
But it is in my top 10.
You just raised it up a notch because of my story.
Yeah, it was heartwarming, and you earned you earned a little bit more appreciation and love from me, so I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
So I like I said in part one, I didn't actually beat this game until I was like a teenager, and I was pretty heavily collecting NES games at the time. And so I want to say this about my opinions on the NES. Like, it's kind of a newish thing, because I've spent a lot of years collecting video games and playing video games. Like, it's a big deal to me to play things that I didn't get a chance to play when they originally came out. I'm going to say this. So here comes an olive branch at you. I do think that were I your age and played this game at 8 years old with no context, with no other, like, if I'm going in blind and I know nothing about this game, I probably would love it more than I do. And that's not to say that I don't love it. I think it's a great game. But I think the fact that I came into it kind of with the whole, I knew everything about it at that point. Like, I may not have played it or beat it, but like, it was like, I felt like I had experienced it already, because it is such a giant, like, iconic video game, on a giant iconic system. So, like, in a way, I do feel a little cheated. And I wouldn't, in terms of the whole series, the only Zelda game that I actually played on day one was Ocarina of Time. I was there. I pre-ordered it. I got a gold cartridge, which the only other time they did that again was on the special edition. The original pressing of Ocarina of Time came in a gold cartridge. And then Majora's Mask would too, just to give credit where it's due. That's probably because they made too many of the shells and they needed to do something with it. But I was in on day one with that, and Ocarina of Time is not my favorite Zelda. Wind Waker is, and we can maybe later in this show we can talk a little bit about why our favorite Zeldas are our favorite Zeldas, if you want. But I think that being in the being on the ground floor of a Zelda game is a very, very special thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I always want to do that now. Like, ever since I was able to do it with Ocarina of Time, and granted, I was even older. You played this game when you were 8. I played that game when I was like 14, I think, when it came out. And it was everything that you said about this was that game to me. Like, it's just a totally life-changing thing. It like made me appreciate the medium that much more. It made me feel vindicated that I had an N64, which was a nice feeling to be like, what? I did buy a cool system.
Totally
I
worth
really
it.
did. Yeah.
Yeah. And only 25 years later, you'd be doing YouTube shows about what we got wrong.
Exactly.
About having regrets about that.
So yeah, I think your fondness for this game is it's certainly the game. It earns the rating that it gets. You say it's underrated. I don't. I think that it's rated very highly, and I think that it kind of is slotted in where it needs to be slotted in.
For NES games, it is rated very highly.
Yeah.
And most, if not all, entities who rate those games rate it higher than the 7 or 8 that you gave it. So at least that is true enough. It feels like it's not a part of the zeitgeist, though, in the way that I want it to be when you're talking about Zelda. And just now in 2023, we just got through a whole avalanche of Zelda talk because of the new Zelda game that came out, Tears of the Kingdom. And Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild were meant to be throwbacks to this very game
100%.
in the way that they just throw you into the world and it's like, go explore, which is very, very cool. And yet, whenever I'm just seeing the coverage of it and the talk about it, it's like everybody or list of best Zelda games. This is not, it's not where it should be. Now, you brought up Wind Waker. I have not played Wind Waker. Wind Waker, most people say actually that is the best Zelda game, and
Yeah.
and that's the opinion that I respect the most because it comes from a wide swath of people whose opinions that I trust. So I'm certainly not offended for you to plant the flag and say Wind Waker is the best Zelda game. No problem.
Yeah.
What annoys me though is that I think a lot of entities have this as like 5th or 6th or something like that. They're putting Ocarina of Time ahead of it. They're putting Majora's Mask ahead of it. They're definitely putting Link to the Past ahead of it. Breath of the Wild now and Tears of the Kingdom. So that's at least 5 games right there. Almost all are ahead of this. And I really don't want to get into the nuances of like, well, what makes it one game better than the other? Because
it's subjective.
It's so subjective. Yeah. And also because of the changing nature of the technology, it's like you really do have to be sort of immersed in a moment to appreciate the game within the moment that it came out.
Anyone who's as into old video games as I am, and there are many of us, that's a part of it. Like a big chunk of the reason why I go back and play old games is just to get a crack cocaine hit of nostalgia.
That's from how I felt at the time.
Right. And it's really difficult to take a game like this, like the original Zelda, and compare it to like the Tears of the Kingdom. Like it's just hard. It's hard to do that for a litany of different reasons.
So when I got this game, I remember every game that I got from my original 8-bit NES. And so it started with Gyromite and Duck Hunt, of course, the packets.
Yep.
Then Kung Fu. That was the first third-party game that I purchased. Then Baseball, and then Excite Bike. And these are all like good games. Like,
well, especially Excite Bike. I fucking love Excite Bike.
Sure. It had a map editor, and that was great.
Mm-hmm.
So Baseball, Excite, and then The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
It came after all that. So all those prior games are fine, but they're very insular, sort of like they're complete games that you know what you're getting. They're not that big.
Well, they're arcadey. Like they're
definitely that's the word, arcadey.
Because that's video games at the time. Like you're still in the 80s. The arcades are still a big deal. They would wane at the end of the 80s and then get resurged by Street Fighter 2 in 92 or 91. But the whole concept of a home video game, and that's why I think, to your point, why this game is so special. Like, but the whole point of a console game, for the most part, at the time was like, let's put the arcade in the home. That was like the goal of all these companies back then. And then comes along this, which is not that.
No, and it's a monstrosity.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's totally fair.
And it's doing all these things that haven't been done before, and you can save your progress and come back after time, so you're not just limited to however far you can get in a certain play session. And all of that it absolutely felt like a revolution. So if you have that in combination with a core memory of beating the game with your brother, and then the gold plating and the gold marking and all that, it was just a triforce, if you will, of marketing and nostalgia.
The hands on the hip when you hit it, too.
A triforce, if you will. It was just a perfect video game at a perfect time. And then of course, what was the Game Boy game called?
Link's
Awakening, of course. So then that comes out, and that's probably the best game on Game Boy at the time. Maybe that and Metroid too. And then Link to the Past comes out, and then all of a sudden now Zelda is like the premier gaming franchise.
Yeah, I think that's especially because I remember as a kid when the because I was on board with Super Nintendo before it came out, so I was like at that time following magazines and stuff like that. And I remember specifically Link to the Past, like the hype was gigantic. Like it was just like, here's Super Nintendo, here's Super Mario World.
Yeah.
Right here, your winners right here.
Definitely.
But in only a handful of months, this game is coming out. And then they showed Link to the Past, and it was just like, holy shit. And at that point, I didn't have the context for this game that you would. So for me, that's Link to the Past is kind of my first Zelda in terms of like being introduced to the series. So for me, I have to go backwards to this one.
So here I promised a personal story about about another Zelda game. It's Link to the Past. I'll tell it now. When that game came out, so again, this is now 88 to 92. It's like 4 or 5 years later. So I'm now like 13, 14, about 13. I was say 13. It was such a big deal, Link to the Past coming out, when I bought it. Okay, I had like a ceremony, like an unwrapping ceremony in my then apartment.
Yeah.
And then my brother and sister were there. My brother is 9. My sister is 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of hyped this event up to them. This is like, it's like, oh, so no wonder you had a career in video games and you now do YouTube shows like about video games.
Yeah.
We put the game in, and then all 3 of us put one hand on the power button.
That's so cute. And that's as cute as it gets.
And I counted down, right? So me, age 13, my brother 9, my sister 5, and I counted down like, okay, guys, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And then the game comes up.
And just freaking out over it.
Now get out of the living room. I'm going to play this game.
Yeah, scram you dorks! It's older brother's time to shine. Man,
so that's
great.
what Link to the Past was to me. And then the game totally lived up to the hype.
Oh, yeah.
It is an incredible tour de force of game that starts off great. The gameplay is great. It's got everything I want in Zelda. So Nintendo, you did it again.
So I didn't know where to fit this in, but I'm gonna jump in here now with it because the topic here is underrated Zelda game, and I'm gonna hit you with an actually underrated Zelda game because I don't think this is underrated. I disagree with that concept. So, Link Between Worlds, which is a direct. They don't do this. Like I shouldn't say the Nintendo didn't used to do this very often, but it's a direct sequel to Link to the Past. Now, yes, obviously Majora's Mask is a sequel to Ocarina, and now Tears of the Kingdom is like a sequel to Breath of the Wild. So this is the first time that they ever actually did that. But it came out on the 3DS, and it was a hit. The 3DS was a substantial console, but when I'm talking to, this is more of an anecdotal thing. I don't out of all of my, literally all of my friends that I am currently in touch with, not one of you played that game,
including me. That's correct.
Yeah. And that game is incredible. It is so good. It is so underappreciated. The fact that it is stuck on the 3DS is sad when all these other Nintendo games have been ported to the Switch. Just in a couple weeks as we record, we're going to get Pikmin 1 and 2 on a cartridge.
Is it? It's not in the online offering?
No, to my knowledge, there has been no 3DS game ported or upscaled to Switch, or even when the Wii U was a thing. They've done it backwards. They've made that game Hyrule Warriors, which is a what's it called? Dynasty Warriors type game with Zelda characters that came out on the Wii U, and then they down ported it to the 3DS. That's the only example of that I can think of off the top of my head. So there's this litany of really good Nintendo stuff that's just stuck on the 3DS, and probably at the top of that list is A Link Between Worlds. It's so innovative. The whole gimmick. 3DS is obviously 3D, so it plays a lot with perspective. So Link can get flat, and then he travels alongside walls and stuff like that.
How are you going to replicate that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could just do it. You could just make it. I know it's not going to be 3D, but who gives a shit? It doesn't have to be. Mario 3D. There's a reason why the 3DS had a physical slider to turn off the 3D. People can't. There's a big chunk of the population that can't even experience stereoscopic 3D, so they had to design the system with that in mind. Anyway, that's a digression. That game is legitimately underrated because no one has played it, and it's stuck on the 3DS. I think were you to play that game, because you do love this game, you do love Link to the Past, I think that game would probably shoot to the tippy top of your Zelda list. It's that fucking good.
Could be. My Zelda list right now is probably Link to the Past is my favorite.
Yeah.
Despite the theme of this episode.
Yeah. I rate Link to the Past higher than this one.
Yeah. But Link to the Past is properly rated. Everybody loves that game, and it's constantly in the top 1 or 2 whenever you see reviews of best Zelda games. This one, I got to give some love to this because nobody else is.
Yeah.
But this would probably be my second favorite game, and then maybe the game I haven't played would be the third favorite.
Right.
My third favorite. Breath of the Wild was that's a good time.
Breath of the Wild is really, really good, and Tears of the Kingdom is really, really good too. But I think I probably already said this before, but I'm going to repeat it because I need to repeat it. I need to get it off my chest. No more climbing, guys. No more climbing.
Yeah.
Make another Zelda game, please, and thank you. No more climbing.
How much? So Wind Waker is your favorite Zelda game.
Yeah.
How much is it your favorite game by? Is it your favorite Zelda game by a little bit, or is it it's just not close?
That's really tough. So gut reaction, I just want to scream out, it's not even close. But that's if I take a breath, that's not true because Zelda games they're really good games. So it's kind of hard to do that. I do have Ocarina of Time is such a special game because time and place. I played that game when it came out. It was me and your brother and our other friend who we're no longer friends with. We all played that game together, and it was so fun. And we would talk about it every day at school.
This was another one where my brother, I had. Oh God, I'll just say it. I had run away from home at the time. Well, I was 18, so.
If I just had 10, well, yeah. This goddamn porno bill's costing too much money. I miss having all my goddamn porno. Oh, man. Now if I just move some money from my savings account and just cancel the health insurance. I'll never stop paying for porno. All that free shit's just goddamn bullshit. I like weird, freaky porno.
But anyway, I was finding myself out in the world.
Naturally.
And this is like the early days of email, and my brother had email. Shout out producer Chris, and he was emailing me his reaction to playing the game. He's like, "Zelda is amazing. Come home now. Play this game with me.
We need you."
And you guys were only like 14 or 15, I guess, at the time, right? So he didn't, like, the emails were very short and like the sentence structure wasn't great, but like he's just communicating.
The point was getting across. Yeah.
Come home, play Zelda with us now. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and then you came home. You came screaming home after that.
Greyhound.
I need you. But okay, to answer your question about Wind Waker, like, it is my favorite Zelda. I'm not going to say by a long shot, but I would say, with confidence it's my favorite Zelda.
Okay.
And I can do a whole episode on why I think it's so good, but I think at the end of the day, it's the look, it's the dungeons, it's the place, like the atmosphere of the game. It's the only Zelda game that I can think of where fucking Link stabs a dude in the head. Oh. Just gonna throw that out there. Spoiler alert. Yeah. For this game that came out 2 decades ago. Yeah. He straight up stabs a dude in the head, and you're just like, holy shit. Because it's like this game that looks like a Miyazaki movie, so you're not expecting something violent like that at all. And then you're like, okay, they mean business here. But yeah, another thing, and this is, I don't think related to, this is all just, me being an obstinate prick, for lack of every other Brian, I love the setup. So the initial reaction of Wind Waker, all the hate that it got, all of like I'm not playing this dumb kid game.
Correct.
All that shit.
I may have had a little bit of that.
I'm sure everyone did. But all that did was fuel my fire. Because my initial reaction when I saw Wind Waker was like, that's innovative. That looks interesting and cool and different. And the fact that everyone shit on it only made me love it more.
So this is, I don't know if I said this before, but this is a really interesting time. God, you were so right about this. So at this time, Wind Waker's coming out, and it's got that sort of kiddified look to it. And
this is beginning 2003, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm 23 years old, right? So I'm like in the prime, like Call of Duty years. Yeah. Like, I want my games to be badass.
I just started college at this point. I'm starting my second semester of college when this game comes out.
Right. So I'm looking for games that are well, I did play the original Call of Duty, which came out, I think, that same year. And then like World of Warcraft games like that. That was the most kiddified I could have a game, would be World of Warcraft, and because it had all this other stuff going on. So you were playing Wind Waker, and I was like, really, Brian? I don't know, man. And then at this exact same time, you're trying to sell me on this. Okay? Yeah. But that's not the only one. Donkey Konga. I will never forget the glee that you and Mystery Person X, who will not name, buying that together, and you guys were so happy about it.
Oh yeah.
And then watching you two large dudes sit there with your congas,
just pounding the shit out of
them. Just like such unadulterated joy,
dude. So I had multiple times. I had 4 people over in my apartment with 4 congas, and we would sit there. And we would, get hammered, get high, whatever you do in college, right?
Yeah, whatever you do in college.
And we would sit there all night and play Donkey Konga. And my downstairs neighbor would always be hitting just so mad. And I was, I've never been an asshole neighbor. Like, I've always tried to, and when I lived in apartments, I always tried to be respectful because I've been on the other side, and there's nothing worse. It's the worst. So like, I was, when they would do that, I would try to like tone it down or whatever, but like it's impossible because you're
Dum,
we're
dum,
smash.
dum.
Yeah, we're acting like Donkey Kong, and we look like Donkey Kong. So it's like, what can we do, right? But I remember, so a day, like a couple nights of that happened, and I'm walking to class, and my neighbor, who's a super sweet elderly Mexican lady, she like comes out and she's like, what are you doing? Like, what is that sound? It sounds like you're like having a dance recital up there or something. And I'm like, oh, it's Donkey Konga. And I'm like trying to explain to her.
Why don't you come inside and we'll give you a Konga?
Why don't you make some delicious Mexican food for us?
Bring over some tamales. Bring over some tamales and a smile.
And we'll provide the entertainment. So yeah, I explained to her like what Donkey Konga was and what we were doing. And she just kind of like just looked at me like, you're
not
different.
have an open mind.
You're different. Not good different. You're bad different.
Wait, was that the neighbor who was actually banging?
Yeah, because you want to know what the hell
Yeah.
was going on.
So,
So I had to tell her, look, lady, we're all young
I'm not
adults.
sure what you want from me. This game came out. What am I supposed to do? Not
It's
play
got
it?
Rock Lobster on it. Do you want me to not play a plastic conga drum to Rock Lobster, you monster?
So you're selling me on Wind Waker.
Yeah.
You're selling me on Donkey Konga. Another game had come out at the time, a little ditty called Katamari Damacy.
Yeah.
I remember being in a car with you, and you're trying and you're talking about it, and somebody else was in the car. And then I think they were actually trying to explain the game. You're like, don't try to explain the game to him. Just have him play the game. If you try to explain it, it's going to sound really, really dumb.
Yeah.
Just give him a controller and have him play the game. And then you did that, and I was like, maybe Brian was right about all of this. Katamari Damacy is really, really fun.
It's a solid game.
Donkey Konga was really fun, and I never even played it. I just watched you guys play it.
But think of the entertainment you had just watching us play that thing.
Absolutely. And Wind Waker turns out probably really, really fun.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I get there. The point is, at a time when everybody was all into these like testosterone filled like like young adolescent games, the Call of Duty is just like the
Look at
example.
Look at the entire existence of the original Xbox.
Definitely,
It's painted in testosterone and HGH
attitude
and
and all-
attitude and all that shit.
Yeah, it's like, it should come with like an Affliction T-shirt.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
So that's going on. I'm like in the middle of all that, and I'm in the industry at the time with a bunch of people who are really into all that. We would have Call of Duty LAN parties at our job.
Yeah.
And then here comes Brian, and he's like, "Hey, guy, check out Donkey Konga, and check out Wind Waker, and check out Katamari Damacy."
Yeah.
And you're like that when you live in the suburbs and you have that friend who lives in the city, and they come out and they're like, "This is the band that everybody in the city is listening to." You're like that guy, but with video games.
I will happily wear the label of video game hipster with pride.
Definitely.
I'm fine with
You're
that.
100%
I'm totally fine with that.
Well, history has treated you very well because those are 3 Grand Slam games that you.
That's what I'm saying. I was
That you
literally just
mentioned.
going to say that. I'm like, yeah, like everyone talked shit on these games at the time, and now they're beloved.
Absolutely.
The entirety of
Yeah.
the GameCube is beloved now.
Yeah, and all those testosterone-filled gamers that look like morons for
Yeah,
being into the stuff that they
it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. So 1 point for you there, Brian. That was
I'll take them when I get them.
that was really good.
Yeah. So okay, let's bring it back to the Zelda game and kind of wind it on down. So I'm going to ask you questions about this game, and we'll see. Maybe rapid fire. We'll see how it goes.
I've got answers.
Okay. So let's start at the top here. What is your favorite dungeon in this game?
I don't know.
Oh boy. Oh, now what do I do?
We need content. We need content right now. My favorite dungeon is probably the 8th dungeon because that was the hardest dungeon of them. And
So
I also,
most fulfilling to beat for you then?
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also liked that there was a cool gimmick in the game where if you use certain items, then you could beat the dungeon bosses really, really easily. There's and then they wouldn't tell you. So something like there's one dungeon boss you'd have to use the whistle, and it was like an eyeball, and then the eyeball shrank, and then you could shoot it with arrows. That was the only way to kill it. So doing that experimentation, even as a kid, and like figuring out what actually worked, that was super, super fun for me. And then also finding the items. And I think in the 8th dungeon, that was the only dungeon that had 2 items. I believe it had the master key, so you never had to use keys anywhere else.
Yep.
And then it had the book that went with the wand. So that was really cool too, because you're exploring the dungeon. You're like, okay, I found the item. Oh, that's really neat. And then you find a second item. Oh my God, there's a second item here. So I would say I'm going to say the 8th dungeon. That's my answer.
I'm going to go with the first dungeon. And the reason why is because it's such a streamlined and fun, like, okay, the caveat here is like, you have to like look at the game as a whole. And why I like the first dungeon so much is that it introduces everything you need to know about the action aspects of Zelda, but it also shows the exploration side. It's in the first dungeon, you by the time you get there, you probably don't have a bomb yet. And the only way you get a bomb at that time is to just kind of find them.
Yeah.
Like you kill an enemy and a bomb shows up. And I remember already kind of having this. I mean, obviously, I didn't play through this game until I was like 13 or 14, whatever age I was. So like I kind of already knew these things, but I can imagine having with fresh eyes, never knowing this. But like the first time you bomb out a wall and then all of a sudden that when you get a compass, like that little area is then populated on the map.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, there's fucking hidden rooms.
Yeah, that's right.
And even though I knew all of that stuff, finding it and discovering it was awesome. So yeah, for me, it's the first dungeon. I think it does a great job of setting up the whole package there.
It's good.
Did you buy the Game & Watch that Nintendo released for this a couple years ago?
Definitely no.
I have it up there. It's awesome. Do you see if you look up on the top shelf, there's a there's a Mario Game & Watch.
Yeah, it's in the box.
No, that's just the box. I have the it's on a little stand there. You stand up. I'm going to ask you to stand up.
God.
I know.
It's third time today, bro.
It's the green one.
Yeah, I got it.
So I want to show you a really cool touch, and I hope that this is all going to be for naught if it's not charged.
And the batteries?
Because I haven't charged in a while.
Cut
Sweet.
content.
Okay,
Cut
check this
content.
out. Check this out. So I'll show the camera here first. I'll show it on your camera here. So this is the front of the device, and this guy didn't sell nearly as good as the Mario one. So for a period of time you could get it for like $20. I bought mine at full retail price because I am a mark. But when I hit power, watch this. Hit power on the device, back of the device. You see that? Well, the light is in the way there, but it has like a.
Nope, can't see.
Yeah, you sure can. You sure
Great content.
That one?
There you go. Yeah.
Do you see that little Triforce?
Yeah, there's a Triforce.
When you light it up, a little Triforce lights up right there. It's such a neat little touch.
That's worth the price of admission.
For sure. And then like it works as an actual alarm clock, so you can see like the clock function there. It has little Zelda 1 graphics and whatnot. I think this is such a cool little thing, and it didn't sell very well, which is alarming because it's a Zelda thing, and it didn't sell that well. So I think Nintendo's done with that series, which kind of sucks, but I get it. You know, how many of me are there out there that buy this shit? Actually, that's a bad question. There's a lot of us. There's a lot of people who buy a lot of Nintendo products. It turns out.
You can just take the episode from here, Brian.
Yeah, no problem.
Just drive us home.
I will literally drive you home while you play that game. So yeah, I think this is probably we could wrap it up here. I want to say I still don't think this game is underrated. I think most people think that this game is fucking excellent and super influential.
I didn't convince you.
Yeah, but I will say that in the entirety of the Zelda franchise, I think there is something to what you're saying. It is kind of being forgotten about. Like that's what I'll say about it. It's not being underrated. I think it's sadly being forgotten about only because time.
I can agree to that actually. If that's the compromise you want to make, we'll do a gentleman's handshake on that.
Perfect.
That it is.
But I mean, it's just
being
like,
forgotten about.
Yeah, and you know, you look at old movies and stuff like that, and like I mean, obviously, like movie dorks are gonna know what Citizen Kane is, but if you go to like the average person on the street and you know ask them what they know about Citizen Kane, like they'll be like, "What is that? Is that
that's a movie?
Is that some sort of narcotic I can put in my nose or whatever it is?" And it's like, I mean, there's an element of like acceptance to that. Like you have to accept it because time is what it is and it fucking travels on and all that shit. But it's hard not to feel a little sad about that because, you know, something like eventually, okay, this is probably a bad example because I do think this game is going to live forever because Nintendo keeps releasing it over and over and over again. But not necessarily this, but I know there's like a big talk right now about video game preservation and how like, I think the statistic's crazy. Like the overall, if you take the entirety of video games as a medium, like only 2% of all the video games that were ever made and ever commercially available are actually like properly preserved.
Like in the cloud or just?
No, just like properly, like archivally preserved. So like, yes, anyone can go out and download a bunch of ROMs for some obscure system. I do it all the time. I recommend it. But in terms of actual like real archival research type stuff, like the film industry has had that for years and years and years.
Yeah.
TV industry has had that for years and years. Like video games kind of don't. They still kind of don't. There's a little upstart. The Video Game History Foundation is they're an official nonprofit that tries to do some of that work. But this game is more or less safe because of how famous it is.
Yeah.
But who knows? Like there is a time and place, maybe this exists where like people don't talk about this game at all anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's where I agree with you 100%, where it is kind of sad because you look at the whole series and like more or less everything that you've come to expect out of a Zelda game does come from that little gold bad boy right there.
Well, it's got the battery. That's already a problem, right? Because you had to replace the battery in this. So,
and if you don't replace those batteries, they do over time they'll leak and they'll destroy the games.
So that's one issue,
right?
The bigger issue for me though is just it is impossible to put people in. So when I tell a personal anecdote, when I talk about how the marketing affected me, when I talk about being at an age, in a place, in a time with a family member, and we're playing it together. You don't get a lot of those in your life. Yeah. And this gave me one. And it gave a lot of other people that one too, because it was so revolutionary at the time.
You've seen that dude that painted his whole Cadillac, the Zelda map?
Oh yeah, I did actually. I did see that. You sent me that.
Yes. So like,
that's great.
It's touched lives. it has touched lives.
That's a level of commitment even beyond me doing the three hand power start
for sure.
That's next level. So it's like when you get one of those, and video games delivers plenty. In fact, the most recent one I had was playing, recommended by you, Demon Souls a few years ago.
Yeah.
Headphones on, had never played a Souls game before. I'm just like locked in. Total immersion. Mm-hmm. Total immersion. So it's nice that at 40 plus years old, Midlife Krisis, video games can still deliver those experiences to us. This was the first of those experiences for me. And it will be sad if we ever get to a world where that's not possible.
Yeah.
And I just want it to be known. I want to be out there that this was the first time, at least for me, but I think also for a lot of other people, that a video game delivered that kind of experience to somebody. So let's not lose that.
That is perfect. And you know, if nothing else, we're here to defend these plucky upstart independent games like the original Zelda for NES. But no, like you're 100% right. I wish more of those moments were, and I don't know if this is because video games are different now or if it's just me changing and growing as a person. I mean, growing older, I don't change. I am the same idiot I've always been. But like,
oh no, Brian.
Don't belittle yourself on the show, dude. But yeah, like I think you're dead on. You're dead on the whole deal about how special video games can be. And yeah, I want more of those. So industry out there, hear our voices, make more compelling games that we can share for years and years and years.
Yeah. It's okay to space out the releases a little bit.
Yeah.
You've done your job for 2023. We're good for this year at least.
Please slow down.
Please slow down. Yeah.
Jesus. We're not 16 anymore. Okay, so let's end it on that. Let's do just a ridiculous. Let's try this one. Oh no! Okay. No!
I got one. I got the other one.